Woke supremacy
To the
news.
November midterm elections with some electoral optimism that they have not felt in months, brought about by falling gas prices, reaction to the decision overturning Roe v. Wade, and a string of legislative achievements which have seen Democratic poll numbers rise. But a new analysis in the New York Times could provide cause for concern. Quote, that warning sign is flashing again. Democratic Senate candidates are outrunning expectations in the same places where the polls overestimated Mr. Biden in 2020 and Mrs. Clinton in 2016. It raises the possibility that the apparent Democratic strength in Wisconsin and elsewhere is a mirage, an artifact of persistent and unaddressed biases in survey research, unquote. Laura, let me start with you. How do you think Democrats should take this New York Times analysis?
Well, I think that compared to, 10 years ago or so, Democrats are far more skeptical when they see that they're way ahead in polling. I mean, the Democrats that I talk to say that they don't by any means think the Senate is in the bag. They just think that it's a much better landscape than it was, say, 5-6 months ago, because of the fact that they see the landscape on the ground changing dramatically after the Dobbs decision. And of course, voter registration is a big aspect of that. But a lot of them expect the races to be really tight. And, I see that too. I mean, just because of the fact that the Senate, Democrats have to hold on to all the seats that they currently hold and then plus gain 2 others. And they're talking about feeling more optimistic in places like North Carolina and Ohio, but those are still going to be really big lifts for them.
There are big lifts. And Scott, Republicans seem to win just 2 of the most competitive races, which are in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona as of right now. Current polling has Democrats up in all of those races. Are Republicans counting on polling overestimating Democratic support as some of these polls have in the past?
Well, I don't know that they're counting on it, but there is a memory that the Senate polling, really going back to 2014, that we're all privy to in the public domain, has been absolute garbage. And most of it has overestimated Democrats. That doesn't necessarily make it true again, and you won't know until after the election, so you can't count on it. But it is in the back of every Republican operative's mind. On those states you just mentioned, by the way, right now, Republicans are feeling really good about Georgia, really good about Nevada. If Democrats are banking on North Carolina and Ohio, so I think that the conditions in the landscape exist for Republicans to do it, but there is a lot of clear eyes right now about some changes in the polling, some changes in the enthusiasm numbers, and also the fact that these are purple states. They were incredibly close in the last couple of seconds.
Absolutely. And Democrats are really leaning into the messaging on protecting abortion access in the wake of the Dobbs decision. And I want you to take a listen to the Democratic Senate candidate, the Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, talking yesterday before voters.
Women are the reason we can win. Let me say that again. Women are the reason we win. Don't piss women off.
Do you think this will be a decisive force in some of these races?
Listen, I think it's going to certainly be a motivating force for so many voters out there, particularly suburban women, suburban white women in particular, and that's a group of women that Republicans have frankly struggled with. One of the things I think when Dobbs came out, it was unclear how Democrats would really message around this because they hadn't really been successful around abortion. It had been a real talking point for Republicans. In so many ways, it's women's own experiences that are becoming the sort of messaging for Democrats, and the experiences of the little girl, for instance, in Ohio, who was raped and then had to go to Indiana. So I think it's a much more favorable environment because of the Dobbs decision, and Democrats have figured out how to message around it. We saw what happened in Kansas. We saw what happened also in that New York special election race. The idea that abortion rights were about freedom, that kind of messaging seems to be resonating with the kind of independent swing voters that are really going to be decisive in these contests.
And Anna Navarro, we've seen some Republican candidates who, before the Dobbs decision, were talking about how they were 100% pro-life, no exceptions except for maybe the life of the mother, et cetera, et cetera. We've seen them try to etch-a-sketch their position on this. Blake Masters, for example, in Arizona, the Republican candidate there, is now acting as though he has a moderate abortion position. Do you think these are examples of people moderating their views, or are they lying to voters?
I think they're lying to voters because they were either lying in the primary or they're lying now. Either way, they're lying. And look, I think what's happened is that many Republicans underestimated the consequences of this decision. For so long, it was about catching the bus, right? And now that the bus has been caught, they've got to live with the consequences. And every day, we as women are reading horrific stories. The 10-year-old girl, the woman in Texas having to deliver a child without a skull, the woman who can't get a DNC after a miscarriage, and that threatens her life. Every day we are seeing what the horrific consequences to women's health, to families, are from this decision, and it's not going away. It's not going away because these stories aren't going away, and I think Senate Republicans and Republicans running anywhere are having to deal with these consequences of catching that bus.
I also want to talk about the former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jeffrey Berman. He has a new book out, and he's doing interviews about it. He makes a shocking allegation in his new book. He's a Republican, about the Trump Justice Department pressuring his office, the Southern District of New York, to go after Trump's perceived political enemies, including former Obama Secretary of State John Kerry. Take a look.
President Trump attacks John Kerry in 2 tweets, saying that Kerry engaged in possible illegal conversations with Iranian officials regarding the Iran nuclear deal. The very next day, the Trump Justice Department refers the John Kerry criminal case to the Southern District of New York. 2 tweets by the president, and the John Kerry criminal case becomes a priority for the Department of Justice. And the statute they wanted us to use was enacted in 1799 and had never been successfully prosecuted.
We hear a lot from like the Steve Bannons of the world about how this is he's being persecuted for political reasons. But this is actually an example, because you have a Republican U.S. attorney saying that this happened, of trying to use the Justice Department for political reasons.
Yeah, I want to hear the response from the people that he alleges, did this pressuring in his book. But, look, I also think Joe Biden has commented on certain Department of Justice issues, even when he claimed he was going to be totally independent of it over time. So I don't know that it's totally unique to Donald Trump.
But this is a call to prosecute people. This isn't.
Well,
he
tweeted out his views about an issue. I mean, after the border patrol guys, got accused of whipping the immigrants, Joe Biden went to the podium with no evidence whatsoever and called for them to be. They'll pay. He said they'll pay. I mean, when he wants to get involved in criminal justice matters, he does.
You don't see a difference between somebody commenting, and I agree with you that it's inappropriate for a president or a vice president to comment on a Justice Department matter. A comment versus a comment and Justice Department officials referring a criminal case to a specific U.S. attorney.
Yeah, I want to hear more about it. I'm not here to defend it, but I am here to tell you that hardly the first president of the United States to ever weigh in on criminal justice matters.
Anna?
Well, 2 things. Look, first of all, let's think about things like the IRS audit, right, of Comey and McCabe. How incredibly coincidental that 2 of Donald Trump's enemies, political enemies, got audited at the same time. The experts have said how rare that was. It was no coincidence. But the second thing that just drives me crazy and irks me so much are all of these complicit, cowardly Republicans who were part of the administration, were part of this problem, and kept quiet for all this time, and now have the gall to write books and try to monetize on what they kept quiet about when they were part of the problem. So I hope that nobody buys these books from people like Bill Barr and John Bolton and this gentleman. And maybe if they buy them or if they get them for free, they can line the cages of their birds with those pages.